series of webinars sponsored by the Bureau of Justice Assistance, U.S. Department of Justice, on corrections information sharing projects. The IJIS Institute is facilitating the webinar, this series of webinars, and each webinar will feature an innovative corrections information sharing project. Today's webinar will feature the County Commissioners Association of Pennsylvania's Unified Case Management System, which was implemented in 2013. The Unified Case Management System enables the entry of an offender's core information one time, and then individual criminal justice departments can access the record and add their department-specific information. The development of the case management program for adult probation, jail, and district attorneys has been an incredible success. 19 of the 67 counties live in some fashion on 2 of the 3 areas, adult probation and district attorney. And the Unified Case Management Program has received nationwide recognition, including being selected as a finalist for Microsoft Customer Service Awards in the public sector category. Presenting today's webinar is Rita Reynolds, Chief Information Officer for the County Commissioners Association of Pennsylvania. Rita has worked with local government technology for 26 years, possesses a BS in Business Administration with a minor in Political Science. After Ms. Reynolds presents today, we're going to allow 15 minutes for question and answers, and we ask you to submit your questions using the question feature on the webinar screen. With that, I'm going to turn the mic over to Rita Reynolds. Rita?
All right, thank you very much, Bob. Let me know if you can't hear me. I think we tested this morning, so we should be good to go. As I was introduced, I am Rita Reynolds, and I am CIO here with the County Commissioners Association of Pennsylvania. Having been here a long period of time and worked with the counties quite a bit on IT programs throughout the years, we've gained a lot of knowledge, and want to share a little bit of history and how we came about being involved in something of this magnitude, working with the counties, and we'll go through an overview first of what we've accomplished. And you'll see some important characteristics as I go through the early slides, but then I'm kind of going to do a recap and talk about what I've come to term 7 important keys that are needed for any project that you might embark on in this type of software development or related processes. So with that being said, I should be able to advance my screen here. And I want to just explain to you first what the problem is that we had here in Pennsylvania, and I suspect in many other states as well. For many years, we had separate case management systems for adult probation, jail, district attorneys, and there was quite a bit of manual data entry. As you can imagine, as a result, there were data quality issues with the data being consistent and being accurate, which did lead to difficulties in using data for management decisions. It's unfortunate that this went on as long as it did, but it is the fact of life that we had to deal with here in Pennsylvania. So how did we get there? How did we get to that point that I just described to you? Like many organizations and many counties, back in the late 1980s, technology was just really taking hold. And in Pennsylvania, there was grant funding provided from the Pennsylvania Commission on Crime and Delinquency to help build systems for the adult probation and jail and district attorneys. A vendor was selected for the majority of the work, but they were 3 separate systems, and they were DOS-based. Anyone remembers back to what we call the DOS days? We didn't have these beautiful menus and easy screens to work with. It was just a little cursor flashing at us, and that was the environment that we started out in. In the late 1990s, these separate systems with additional grant funding were upgraded into what we all call Windows. Microsoft definitely has taken over, and Windows was very popular back then, and it still is. So we focused on getting many of the counties into that environment. In the mid-2000 time frame, it was a little bit of a transition. There was some grant funding provided for the one system for jail for piloting in our second largest county, but it didn't really go much further than that. The funds were I don't want to say they're becoming less available, but they really were based on what counties were able to access in years before. On the same token, the adult probation side was also web-enabled, but that wasn't done with grant funding. It was done with the vendors' initiative, and there were some difficulties with rolling that out. So most counties did not upgrade with their current system that they had into that web environment. Now, not saying they didn't want to. So CCAP at that time really took a step back and said, you know, we need to focus on the data. Not that we don't want to be involved in assisting counties with procuring software, but we want to focus on what is in the system. And at that time, there was a very big marketing effort as well as education effort at the national level about NEEM standards. And we put together a grant application to the federal government and were recipients of a grant to implement NEEM, National Information Exchange Model, in Pennsylvania. And being part of the IGIS group here, many of you probably are aware that IGIS has been very instrumental in helping bring NEEM to the standard that it is now. So we started out in Pennsylvania learning NEEM, and we really wanted to focus on something that was measurable. And instead of trying to conquer the entire world of NEEM, we developed a toolkit for Pennsylvania counties, and we focused on 77 data elements that would be NEEM compliant in the county systems. So we worked on that for several years. It was a pilot first with the federal funding, and then the Pennsylvania Commission on Crime and Delinquency saw the success that we were experiencing with the pilot counties and agreed to provide further funding so that we were able to complete the toolkit efforts in every county, if not every department, at least one of those 3 departments that I talked about, adult probation, jail, or district attorney. I'm not going to go into detail about that process today, but in summary, what it allowed us to do was to standardize key data elements within the system so that they were consistent. We, as I mentioned here, did win the 2011 Best of NEEM Award, which we were very grateful for, and also followed up with doing some survey with the counties that had participated as well. So just to advance here, pardon me, Don, my screen's not advancing. Thank you. Here's a map of what we were able to accomplish in the 2 different phases, which is, you know, why the different colors, but 67 counties. And they all did experience NEEM improvements in some fashion. The results of that, as you can see, our scoring sheet here, I'll go through these few slides fairly quickly, but we experienced a significant improvement in the data. The chart you see in front of you is for the jail data, and we have classes in Pennsylvania for the different counties, so you can see by class what those percentage improvements were. Adult probation was a 200% change, and then in the district attorney offices, it was a 232% change. The reason for that higher percentage is that when offender data would hit the district attorney's office and start there, there's a lot of the demographics about the individual that they don't have time to input. And so they had a lot of empty fields. And we were able to work with them to improve the data collection and to help see that some of those fields were being filled in moving forward. So the NEEM process took several years, and we did a survey at the end to ask counties specifically if they understood what NEEM meant. You know, this national standard for helping make data consistent. Some examples, you know, if hair color is brown in one system, it's going to be brown in the other system, and it's going to use the same mapping or the same name of the color of the hair in every system. So you can see 83% of those who participated in NEEM really felt they understood the importance of standards. And they also recognized that they saw improvements even in their data, not just the data itself, but in the processes they were using to ensure that data was consistent. We were able to take the case management systems they had and add drop downs that they would select from the correct NEEM labeling, so that as they moved forward in the system, it wasn't inconsistent. And then finally, we asked whether they wanted to do more of this. You can see it's 50-50% for NEEM standard additional work in the county, but the main reason for that being half and half is that the amount of time and resources that counties have available is limited, and they focus very much on doing their jobs every day to take care of addressing offender needs. So we weren't disappointed in the results at all. We felt that a lot of progress had been made. So what I want to talk about, and that was kind of the precursor to what we call CJUCM, Criminal Justice Unified Case Management. And we, out of those, the work that we did with the county on the data quality, we realized there needed to be a solution, a unified solution, where there was a core set of offender data in one location that was accessible by the appropriate criminal justice staff based on security roles. And that just does not exist in Pennsylvania. We have many more than just 3 systems where data is entered and it's the same data. You know, John Smith is an offender and he has 3 different aliases in the district attorney system, but when you get over into adult probation, he's got 2 more aliases and they're not in the DA system. John Smith might have 7 addresses, 2 of them are in the DA system and 3 of them are in the jail system, and the remaining 2 are in the adult probation system. Separate systems really does not give you a core set of consistent data for an offender. And so we knew what we were looking for, and we had the support of the counties. So we came up with a diagram here where the offender's data, and if you can see my mouse moving, the offender's data would go into this, what we called a barrel of information, the core system, and it would contain all of the data about an offender that should not be duplicated. So their demographics, hair color, eye color, height, weight, their addresses. Well, there are multiple addresses. 123 North Main Street from January 1st, 2012 to December 31st, 2012 should only be in there one time. The dockets in Pennsylvania, when you go through the criminal justice system, dockets are created, or cases are created, and so for every time an offender is charged, he will have one case or one docket, and he'll have multiple charges on it. He might have 1, he might have 20, and then he will have a sentence that is applied either to all the charges or varying sentences applied to different charges. All of that should be the same regardless of whatever system you're in. And so all of that I just described is in that barrel. Then you have work on top of that barrel of information by the district attorney's office, or if the offender's in jail, or if the offender is now on probation. And it's information that other departments may or may not be allowed to see. So for example, if an offender is in adult probation and the officer is meeting with the offender and he's inputting case notes about the offender, they don't want the DA's office or the jail's office to see that. And so by separating it out and having 3 different modules on top of it, of that core barrel of data, then you have access to the same common data, but you're adding data on top of it. Okay, so in the process of coming up with that model, one of the things that we realized early on is that we needed to have strong governance in place. We had used a steering committee for data quality for that NEEM project I told you about earlier, and it worked really well. It was a committee that was made up of state stakeholders, as well as CCAP staff, county commissioner staff, as well as county representatives from the 3 different areas. And the state stakeholders included Department of Corrections, the Board of Probation and Parole, the Administrative Office of the Pennsylvania Courts, Pennsylvania State Police, our Sentencing Commission, our Justice Network, which is, you'll see it referenced here, JNet. They handle all of the connectivity and sharing the pipeline for how the data is shared. And I'm sure I'm leaving someone off of there. We had them as part of the data quality, and we knew moving into our UCM project that we would need strong governance, and we wanted to make sure that we kept that steering committee in place, but we also wanted to make sure that we had implementation teams that was involved in really designing and making sure that this is a county solution. In our state of Pennsylvania, it was not a state solution. It really was designed by the counties. And so you see that you have the District Attorney Association along with the County Commissioners Association along with the Adult Probation Chiefs Executive Association. Representation from each of those 3 areas worked very closely with the counties to come up with the design that I showed earlier. And we've used that structure even up until today. We do our quarterly implementation meeting, which is now really starting to evolve into a governance board, and then we still have the steering committee in place. And if you want to do a quick snapshot of that, that literally is every organization that's been involved at our steering committee level. One might think, gee, is that a big steering committee? And it really is not. It works out to be about 20 individuals, and they all play a part in this process. If we had tried to do a unified case management system without our state partners involved, we would have failed. There are so many touch points and so many areas where there needs to be consistent communication and a common goal that by having the steering committee as part of the process, even though they don't own the software and they don't make the final decision, they really feel a part of it because they're offering input all along the way. So with that process in place, we started that before we even started development. And we started development in January 2012 and spent about a year working on development, not quite a year. And what features we have been able to include address decreasing data entry. We have a live automated feed of data from the court system that comes into this UCM instance for each county that's part of the program. And it has eliminated, we haven't even calculated the percentage of data entry, but it's tremendous, the amount of data entry it has eliminated. It includes all of the functions for incident and case management of the offender. And then there are dashboards that allow for higher level management of their office based on looking at the data from a high level view. Some other features, we created alerts which send notices to officers about different things that are occurring with the offender, and it has really provided information to those that use the system that improve safety and give additional, I use the word intelligence, but it really is intelligence about the offender. I remember one county implementing UCM, and I was there that week, and they said to me, I didn't know so-and-so was in our system, and she's the girlfriend of this other person. Because they were using a DOS-based system, they couldn't get that information out. So definitely gives better knowledge of the offenders that are being managed. And then there's advanced reporting features. There's also what's called state JNet error reporting. And as I said, the Justice Network is really the pipeline for sending data up to the state. And the data that goes to the state agencies needed to be accurate, and there were problems in the past with it being accurate. So JNet has since told us that counties using UCM, that their error reporting has gone down. The errors that they see has definitely decreased. And then we are doing data integration with other systems that are using industry standards, which is what the web services is all about. And finally, the incident management features. So I have a few screenshots. I just want to show you that this doesn't even come near doing justice for what the system looks like. It is built on Microsoft Dynamics CRM as the foundation, but then we have added a lot of customizations and a lot of development on top of it. And you can see here's a screenshot of the dashboard for adult probation, and I can easily switch between adult probation and another module by just changing the dashboard drop down near the top there. Then further down in the system, you'll see it's really like a list of offenders, but you can search very quickly, and in a matter of 5 seconds have a list of all the SMITs in the system, active or inactive, depending on how you want to search. And then here's a screenshot for our alerts. We have this particular gentleman. All of this is fictitious data, and you can see we have these different alerts on there. When you hover over them, they tell you different things about the individual. The green one is actually that DNA has been drawn on this individual. In Pennsylvania, what we were having occur is that DNA would be drawn on an offender because it was required during the trial or before the trial, and then they get to probation and it's drawn again. This eliminates duplicate efforts there as well as cost. Then there's some other icons here. Some of them you can click on and actually go down into more data. The aggregate view gives you total numbers of charges and sentences for that offender for their entire life in the system. And then these are just the different modules. As I said, I'm not going to go into detail, but I just wanted to show you, kind of give you a little bit of a look and feel for what those areas look like. So the last piece of this in what we've developed for the counties is what's called an offender web portal. It is specific for adult probation, and it is actually something that the offenders use. If you're on probation and you are what's called low supervision in Pennsylvania, in other words, you really, okay, you did something you shouldn't have done and you've got to do 6 months of probation. Fill out this questionnaire every month, and so long as you fill it out and you answer the questions correctly and you bring it in, then you're done with probation. Instead of having to come into the office, we have this automated web portal that's available through the internet. The offender logs in if they're allowed, and they can do their check-in, and they can request a change of address because they have to have permission before they can move, or they can do a travel request. And that data immediately is imported into the UCM system, and the officer gets a notice if the offender asked a question, and he can log into UCM and answer the question, and the answer goes back to the offender. So that's the first part. What you're looking at right now with the Offender Web Portal is actually the part we took live first, because it was a very small portion of UCM, and it enabled the county adult probation offices to start using UCM on a limited basis, and they became familiar with it before they actually went live with the whole product. So what I want to do now is talk about what I call the 7 keys, how we've accomplished all of this. I'm going to share some of the results here in a bit of where we're at and how many counties we've worked with and where we're headed. But I really want to spend 10 minutes or so just really focusing on the important keys that you need to think about when you're starting a project or a program of this magnitude. And they're listed there. We're going to go through each one of them. First of all, you have to know if there's a need. How many times do we get a call from a vendor and they tell us what we need? Or they say, hey, I'm sure that you have a need in this area and here's what we have to offer you. That's not the way that our development worked. As I said, we're a state association. We're not really a vendor, and yet we are really operating in my technology department here as a software company. And we took it from the approach of what's the need of the county, and we listened to the counties talking about their pain points, as we call it. And we knew that the need is that the case management system in the county had been separate non-connected systems for decades, and that there were inaccuracies and delays in data entry. This resulted in inefficiencies in what I call offender processing, which led to higher costs and ultimately higher recidivism rates. Throughout all of this process, I emphasize with everyone I talk to, it's not just a program to us, and it's not a revenue generator for us here at CCAP. We're doing this for other reasons, and one of them is to work on behalf of the counties to help government work more efficiently, but ultimately it's to help move an offender through the criminal justice system in a judicious way as well as an efficient way, so that what needs to happen for them is done correctly and appropriately. If you work in the corrections environment, you know that offenders will sue. And so if they sit in jail one more day than they're supposed to, they're going to sue. If they don't get what they think they should have to eat, or they feel the living environment is not good, they're going to sue. If a case management system can provide information in a better format and in a more timely format, those type of situations may be able to be avoided. And we have actually had several counties talk to us about once they started using UCM, they discovered some things with their offenders, with a group of offenders, and they were able to address it much more quickly than they had been able to in the past. So you have to know what your need is. You need to have a vision, or as I call it, a purpose. You may know what the need is, but do you know where you want to go? And we knew we wanted to enhance the adult justice system in Pennsylvania. We also knew we wanted a unified system, and that automated processes where we could share data to and from the state and with other independent systems were critical as part of that vision. And so oftentimes when I'm working with our developers here and we're prioritizing, I'll come back to this and I'll say, how is this helping us meet that vision? Because sometimes you may get requests to work on something or to add something to your project that you've started, and you need to say, is this going to really meet the overall vision? With us having 67 different counties, there are times where we have 67 different opinions. And one of the byproducts of what we've done in this process is that many areas the counties have been willing to standardize, and they saw that the only way to automate the process was for them to agree on the process. And so that became part of the vision. And as we get new requests, we come back to this and we say, okay, is this going to help overall, or is this a quote-unquote one-off recommendation or suggestion? Then you need to confirm the commitment. And I just want to step back for a second. All of these keys need to be looked at on a regular basis. They're not once and done. This particular one is having the commitment from everyone involved. I remember before we even started being in a group meeting on data quality and saying, will we ever get to a unified system? And they all laughed, literally, because they said, you know, we'll never be able to agree. But because of all the problems everyone was experiencing, when the opportunity presented itself to use Microsoft Dynamics CRM, they were all willing to come together. And the state was not left out, as I said earlier. We knew having state stakeholders was critical. And in our state of Pennsylvania, having a quasi-governmental entity like CCAP kind of being the central focal point to oversee all of this has worked really well. and we're committed to it. They know that we're not going to go sell the product and go out of business. CCAP's been around for 130 years, and we're here for the long haul. So commitment is critical, and I don't want to leave out the most important with the counties. We've done enough implementations now that we know and have experienced that upper management has to be committed as well. Not every implementation goes as smoothly as we would like it to, and there are times where the office workers and the officers are committed, and upper management may have other ideas, and they may be afraid of change, or it could be vice versa, or switched there. If upper management, the chief probation officer, the warden, say to the rest of the users and officers, we are going to move to this new system, and if there's a problem, CCAP will fix it, and if there's a change in business process, let's identify it now as much as we can, but recognize that when we go to implementation, there will be some pain. And when upper management takes that approach for the implementation, it will go much smoother, and the chance for success is much higher. So commitment is critical. That's why I spend a little bit of time on this one. Then, of course, you need a plan. If you've done any type of projects, software development of any sort, or been involved in an implementation, you really do have to have a plan. And we start out with time frames, but we also recognize, depending on how ready the county staff is for the transition and how ready the data is, and that goes back to the quality of the data, that plan might have to adjust a little bit. So we have done so far 22 counties, and it's part of our success. We have 22 counties that are implemented in some fashion. Most are adult probation because that's the department we started with. We have district attorney module implemented and live in one county, and we're getting ready to go live in another county, a very large county as a matter of fact, and then there's about another 13 counties that are lined up for district attorney. And then we have about 14 counties that are ready for the jail implementation, which will start here in the spring. You can, in our approach, we could not implement all 3 departments at one time in a county. It is a big project to implement, but 2, those departments all have to be ready from a business process change. And we've done a merged county, and it is change. Adult probation and DA offices find that while they talked a lot before, they still have to communicate, and they have to agree on who owns certain parts of the data. So we are moving along and continuing to do implementations as I speak. We have also been able to take UCM and have it serve as a foundation for other areas. Juvenile detention is listed there because that is actually going live here in the next 4 weeks in a county. And we took the base of UCM, didn't have to redo that barrel of information that I showed you, and then we added the juvenile piece on top. And the development time was cut significantly, therefore making the cost for doing that a lot less than you would have and would experience if you were purchasing a commercial product off the shelf just for juvenile detention. And then, as I mentioned earlier, we have what we call interfaces in place. Those are those web services that bring information into the system without you touching anything. And then there's data that's sent up to the state and is used statewide for statistics as well as for what we call offender safety. So we have a watch list, and the data that's sent up through JNet helps contribute to that sharing with other counties where an offender might be in the process. We also have, as I've mentioned before, core data that's recorded and updated in one system now. Definitely improved case management efficiencies and better able to make management decisions. I remember the one county who received a call from the judge and said, can you please come over here in about half an hour? I want to look at this particular group of offenders and bring with me your statistics on them. And it had to do with what we call specialty courts, and we have drug courts here and mental health courts. And in her old system, she would never have been able to print out a list of all of that information. In the new system, she went to her administrative person, and within 15 minutes they handed her the information she needed. That's improvement, and you're better able to make decisions than you were before in a more expedited fashion and a more informed fashion. So, lessons learned. I am not going to paint it as a rosy picture that everything was good on every day. We definitely have learned lessons, and that is an important key in any program or project that you implement. You have to take a step back and look at those lessons. We've found that standardization is critical to implementation. That's that data quality part. When you work with a vendor to import data, it's very difficult to import data into a new system if the records aren't consistent. So standardization, very important. We've learned that balancing the expectations early on helps everyone understand that this isn't just flip a switch and we'll be in a new system tomorrow. We've also worked more closely with the IT departments than we did in the beginning to make sure that the IT staff at the county is aware of the project. Even though we host most of the UCM instances here in our private cloud, we still maintain a rapport with the IT staff at the county level. And then, as most of you probably already know, project management, planning are very important in the process. And we've also really, I think we all knew business processes would change. We heard a lot of, well, I've always done it this way, and yet we really didn't know how many processes would change until we started doing the county implementations. And it's scary for the county staff, and sometimes folks are reluctant, but when they see the focus on how do you do it right now, and let's talk about how you can do it in UCM before you even get to the new system, the fear factor is addressed much better. We also just recently ran into a situation where connectivity was an issue, and it was a county that their internet access is just not good. So we thought we wouldn't have as much of that folks have run into in the past, but we are still seeing that even in our day and age. So we are working closely with the IT department in that county, and we're more informed now as we roll this out to other counties on how best to address, where we can, connectivity issues with the county. And finally, slow and steady does win the race. We're not really out to win a race here, but we want to be successful, and the counties want to be successful with the implementations, and it's better to delay than to implement and have problems when you're not quite ready or the data didn't import the best possible way it could have imported. And based on the lessons learned, then you may have to adjust the plan that you have in process, which means that what we've had to do is be better at managing expectations. We get a lot of questions once a county signs up that says, can we go live June 30th? And I will say, and our project manager will say, well, it depends. And they don't like that answer. And when we start explaining, here's why it depends, then they get a better understanding. And we remind the county staff of that all along the way. And we're not afraid to adjust the timeline. As I said earlier, it's better to not deliver something and delay it than to deliver a product or an implementation that there are problems that are surrounding it. And we have also acknowledged that we do need to be charging a little more. We've been very reasonable in our support costs, but now that we've got a year and a half under our belts on terms of how many hours it takes to support each county, we have taken back to the governance board some adjustments to the fee schedule going forward. We don't charge a lot, but we do need to make sure that we cover our costs so that we can continue to improve the program that we're offering. Okay, so I actually did that in exactly 45 minutes, give or take a minute of overview. I'm going to go back here a little bit, and I want to turn it back over to Bob and see what questions you might have, and we can go back to any part that you would like to cover.
Rita, thank you so much for that presentation. We do have a few questions, one related to a statement you just made about cost. Do the counties appreciate the cost savings that they may be receiving that makes it easy for them to be willing to pay whatever you charge them for this system?
Yes, they absolutely do, and the reason for that is that we've been very transparent. We have an MOU that the county signs initially that covers the costs, because there is an investment in the Microsoft Dynamics CRM license, the user license that they have to buy for each user of the system. And then our support fee, it's a maintenance and support fee, really covers all of the work that we've done on top of it. And because we've been transparent about statistics on here's our help desk, here's how many hours we spent in development, and we've also done comparisons for them of what they were paying before, they recognize the cost savings. It's not a cost savings that they will see necessarily in the first year, but when you do a 3-year comparison, the cost savings is very significant.
Thank you. By the way, for everybody listening, please feel free to type in any questions you have as we go into the question box on the screen. Another question, what would you say was the biggest obstacle when you first started to float this idea to develop this system? What was the biggest thing you had to overcome?
That's a really good question. You know, it was like a very small snowball. I use this as an example. There's 2 examples I use. One is the snowball, where it started out very little and it's now turned into an avalanche because it has been so successful. We had what I call a perfect storm of everything being in the right place at the right time. Day one, we didn't have any funding, and on day one, I would have said that would have been our biggest obstacle. But within 6 weeks of starting to talk about the concept and meet with the counties and start the planning, we received that initial grant from Department of Justice. It was significant because that really enabled us to put into a pilot what we knew could happen. So cost wasn't necessarily, at that point, wasn't the major obstacle. Yeah, if you were to ask me now what's the major obstacle, I can answer that quickly. The major obstacle now is actually kind of twofold. One is making sure the county is ready. And counties many times want to go live ASAP. But we know from experience that they're not ready. And helping them see why they're not ready and why we're not ready because of work that we have to do with the data is a challenge. As I sit here and think, probably the one obstacle that will continue to be, it's not an obstacle, it's just an awareness, is that business process change. And I said that in the presentation. We knew that that would be a challenge at the beginning, and we talked about it on a regular basis. And now we see where counties have really taken to heart addressing the change is going to happen. The implementations will go well, but where there's more education needed in a county, then we really have challenges there to make sure that all the staff are made aware of what's coming, and on any given day we may not know. So that's a challenge.
Okay. We have some more questions. You had a core of 77 NEAM data elements. By the time you added DA, CORD, and other agency elements, how many do you end up with?
You know, I don't have the answer to that off the top of my head. I would have to have my staff take a look at that one. I don't know. I do
Okay,
know that it's a requirement. Yeah, it is a requirement when we start interfacing with other areas, like for victim witness. That's the first question we say to them: are your data elements NEEM standard?
Okay. Another question: do you have a single sign-on to accommodate all the other log-ons that agency staff have to track?
That's a great question, and what we have done with UCM is required from a security perspective the use of what's called Active Directory Federated Services. It's a big phrase, but what it means is you're a government employee and you have a login when you start working for the county. R. Reynolds at whatever, at samplecounty.com or .org. And UCM is set up such that we can federate with the county and use that same login. Doesn't mean we have access into the county system. It just means that my R. Reynolds will work when I log into UCM. Now, when I log in, I have to have permissions to see data, which is handled within UCM. So the short answer to the question is yes, single sign-on is utilized through what's called ADFS.
Okay. Do you have a list of all the current NEEM and non-NEEM data elements in your barrel or the final repository?
I know we have a list of all the NEEM elements. There's definitely a lot more not NEEM than there are NEEM, just because of working towards standards in Pennsylvania. But I can provide that.
Okay. Does the system
Bob,
feed
would I
off?
provide that back to you? Would I provide that back to you?
Yes. Yes, because we have who's asking the questions. We can get that out to everybody. Does the system feed off the data warehouse that you update regularly, or are all the agencies inputting data in real time in central database?
Okay. To answer that question, our administrative court system is a centralized system where the courts enter data there. The counties are structured separately from the courts, and so adult probation and jail and district attorney are what we've accomplished with UCM. And that UCM system is one system that the staff are entering information into and sharing. It receives data from that centralized court system that core set of data when the offender first starts in the court process. And so it's not really a centralized data system for the entire state of Pennsylvania because each county has their own UCM instance. We're not in all offenders for all 67 counties in one system at the county level. We're not there yet. But we are at the point now where we are developing web services to transfer offenders when they go from one county to another. Say they move from Dauphin to Lancaster County, for example, and that data can transfer automatically from Dauphin's UCM to Lancaster's UCM.
Okay, thank you. Do you have now, or are there plans for connection to FBI's index?
That has not been discussed. It's a great idea. I would say that I know there's a couple PA folks on this call, so they're actually on my steering committee. So we can discuss that further. It would be something we would entertain, but it would have to be put in the pipeline of priorities.
Very good. Because many county IT staff have limited development experience, how much help or resistance did you have from vendors?
So, as I mentioned, CCAP, County Commissioners Association, I am the CIO here, and I oversee our technology department. We have hired developers as employees to develop this system. And we work with IT staff where there are IT staff because we want them to know how it works, because Microsoft Dynamics CRM can actually be used for other programs. That being said, there's a vendor community out there that has designed case management systems. And they're not real happy with what we've done because it is replacing some legacy systems. We don't look at it as putting a vendor out of business at all. We've even offered partnerships with a number of vendors because the bigger goal of unification is what is important. If a vendor had presented a unified system 5 years ago for Pennsylvania for counties in adult probation and jail and district attorney, I don't know that CCAP would have gone this direction. It wasn't here. It was a need that needed to be filled.
Okay, another question. How do you resolve situations where the partner systems do not use NEEM-compliant data definitions? For example, in the victim services example you mentioned earlier.
So, excuse me. One example that there was an integration that we've been discussing, and we identified early on that that system was not NEEM compliant. And so we have not integrated with them because we can't until their processes, their data is NEEM compliant. So we don't give on the NEEM standards. That being said, UCM is not going to go backwards. We're not going to undo the NEEM part of it, but what we will do is share how we cleaned up the data, and we've done this on several occasions with other systems that need to interface, and given them the tools and our toolkit so that they could work through the NEEM process on their end.
Very good. Well, Rita, I want to thank you very much for all of your help today and responding to these questions, and we will document the responses to these questions for the record. I want to thank everybody who's attended this webinar today and let you know that this webinar has been recorded and will be posted on the IGES website the next few days to be available to you or anybody else you know that may be interested in hearing the webinar. As I said, this is the first in a series of webinars on corrections information sharing projects. The next corrections information sharing webinar will be held in early February. Everyone registered for this webinar will automatically receive the invitation announcement for the next one. The next webinar will feature the Hampden County Sheriff's Department Reentry Information Sharing Project. That's Hampden County, Massachusetts. Hampden County was the first of BJA's corrections information sharing projects in support of offender reentry. Hampden County uses an information sharing architecture conforming to NEEM and GRA standards to enable the sharing of offender information with community-based service providers that serve offenders post-release. So please stay tuned, look out for the announcements for that, and register. I'm sure you'll enjoy that presentation as well. And again, I want to thank everyone for participation in today's webinar, and especially thank Rita Reynolds for her time and effort to share the Pennsylvania Unified Case Management System with everyone. This concludes the webinar for today, and on behalf of the IGES Institute, thank you very much.
All right, thank you very much for the opportunity to present. I greatly appreciate it.
Thank you, Rita. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.